Before installing the motherboard, please note that the motherboard is an extremely delicate object that should be handled gently. So when lowering it into the case, make sure that you do not force it in and instead just slowly guide it in. Once you put in the motherboard on the back plate of the PC case, align it to the I/O port socket on the back plate on the back wall of the case, and once you have that pushed in, make sure that the corner screw holes for the motherboard are aligned with the case's holes. Then screw in your screws. However, do not do it too tight. The VGA socket is located on the back wall of the PC case. To install the VGA chip, you must open the clip by using the blue tab, which exposes the holder for the chip. There is also a slot under the holder which you are meant to slide the bottom of the chip into. So when installing the chip, make sure that the bottom goes into the slot and that the top of the VGA chip aligns with the hole in the holder. After checking those two things, pull back down on the blue tab in order to lock in the chip. Before installing the RAM stick, you must open the RAM sockets on the motherboard and know which slots to use. In this case, we're going to be only using the white RAM sockets for our two sticks. To open the sockets, press down on the two tabs, then install the RAM into the slots. Note that when doing this, you should never touch the bottom of the stick and you should make sure that the indent of the RAM aligns with the socket. Lastly, when pushing the RAM into the socket, push with equal force on each side till you hear a click. Before you touch the CPU, make sure that you open up the socket on the motherboard. This is done by pushing down and lifting up on the lever on the side of the socket, then lifting out the outline itself. When handling the chip, make sure you are holding it by the sides and avoid touching the gold area pins on the bottom as you may damage it. Also make sure you're matching the gold corner of the CPU with the corresponding corner of the socket, which is the corner with no tip.
When installing the front port device, make sure that you have the right side facing up. Also, make sure that you press down on the power button while moving the device into place to give you more room. Once you have the device in place, carefully screw in your screw to the top. If the screw falls, it is usually hard to recover. Before installing the fan, make sure that you are facing it in the right way and that you can clearly see the indent to the left wall of the PC your fan clip is supposed to fit into. After doing that, gently push in your fan until you hear a click. Then plug in the two cables attached to the fan, which outlets are located in the motherboard right in front of the fan. There are technically two parts to the heatsink, the brace and the heatsink itself. The first thing you're going to install is the brace. When installing the brace, make sure that the rods of the brace are facing the CPU. Then screw it in. Before installing the heatsink, make sure that there is thermal paste on the bottom of the heatsink. If there is no pre-applied thermal paste, you must apply some to the CPU. After that, align the heatsink's hooks with the brace's rods and then let the heatsink down and screw in the front end. Keep in mind that you are screwed into the motherboard, therefore you should be not screwed too tight.
Next, we're going to install the power supply unit. Slide the power supply unit gently against the right of the case so it's aligned with the brace at the back. Next, we have to screw 3 screws along the bottom of the case in order to secure the power supply unit. Finally, we need to attach the power supply cables onto the motherboard. Attach the 4-pin cable at the top of the motherboard and the main power cable that is plugged into the port right next to the power supply unit. The optical disk drive will need an orange SATA cable that is attached from the optical drive to the motherboard, as well as a power cable from the optical drive to the power supply unit. Once those two cables are attached, we need to slide the optical disk drive into its slot located near the top of the computer case. Slide it in until you hear a click. The hard disk drive will need 3 cables to be attached. The first is a blue SATA cable that is attached from the hard drive to the motherboard. Next, we'll need to attach the hard drive's fans to the motherboard, and we'll also need to attach a power cord from the power supply unit onto the hard drive. Now, to place it in, the 2 blue trigger clips need to be facing away from the bottom of the case and towards the middle. Brace the hard drive against the bottom wall and slide the 2 trigger clips down until you hear a click. To finish off, we'll need to put the cover plate back on top. Make sure all your components are in first so you don't miss anything. Then, brace the cover against the left side of the case with the guides matching the holes. Press the right side down and use the latch at the bottom right to secure the case. Just like that, you've assembled the computer.